both of Alexander and some of Hercules, of Hector and Lysander, and such great names as these. But of all...
Hello and welcome to today's BattleMech review. Today we're going to be looking at the Nightstar, which is a mech that is incredibly popular right now, at least with the Federated Sons and still with the Lyran Alliance / Commonwealth / whatever they decide to be called this week. It's a mech that was brought back into prominence after the rediscovery of the Elm's memory core, mostly because, well, the companies that made it knew how it was built, they just didn't have the parts for it. Now that they do, they've put it back into production with the model we see on the right-hand side here. That's the one you're probably going to be seeing most of the time if you're out and about. On the left-hand side, we've got the original model, the one that the Star League was using. And it's still a pretty cool-looking mech. It's just a little bit different from what a lot of you and us are going to be used to seeing. In the middle here, we've got Tancred Sandoval, who is a pretty influential human in history, basically. And he did pilot a Nightstar on the Battle of New Avalon during the Federated Commonwealth Civil War. So I do think it's a good picture to put on there. So let's get into it. The Nightstar was originally introduced as a command mech for the Star League. Well, I'm starting to have a bit of an issue here trying to keep up with all the command mechs that the Star League were introducing. I'm wondering at this point if they introduce any standard mechs every once in a while to compensate for all the command units that they add. We have the Emperor that I'm going to be talking about fairly soon. We've got the Black Knight. We've got the Mongoose to command Scout Lances. You've got the Marauder. You've got the Shootist. You've got the King Crab, and that's not counting things like the Phoenix Hawk, the Wolverine, the Atlas, and the Battlemaster, which were some of them introduced for the Star League, some of them introduced for people at large, and all of them could also be used as command mech for different versions. So the sheer amount of command units that were introduced during the Star League era is a little bit weird, and shows that nowadays we don't have that many command units that are being introduced anymore because, well, we're reusing a lot of these old ones. The Nightstar was introduced because of a little problem. During the MR's Civil War, the elite of the SLDF was generally piloting a bunch of Mad 1R Marauders. All of those were commanders and officers that had been trained through the Gunslinger program where they used Marauders extensively. So it was fairly easy for just about everyone to know, well, who was the commander on the enemy side. The Rimworld's army really knew about this, and they trained the various crews in hunting down and destroying all the Marauders. The SLDF could use pretty much any battle mech that they wanted at this point. You had the Black Knight, the Emperor, so on and so forth. I guess you understand where I am going there. But their pilots didn't want to pilot anything other than Marauders, so there was that little bit of an issue. In response to this, well, the good people at GM and Northstorm went to see the SLDF and General Kerensky and say, well, we're able to build you a bigger and better Marauder. Not a Marauder 2, because that would be silly. Nobody wants a Marauder 2. That just doesn't exist. But, you know, they decided to go with a 95-ton machine that they decided to call the Nightstar. It was one of the most advanced pieces of battlefield hardware out there, and I would say that even today it's still pretty darn modern. It's got a command computer in it, obviously, because that's what it was meant to do here as a command mech to replace the Marauder. But it also featured an advanced variable range targeting system, which is almost unheard of in any other machines. I've got people walking into the store trying to get me to install a Nightstar's cockpit into other machines, and I've been semi-successful doing this. I've got quite a few Stone Rhinos that are using Nightstar cockpit assemblies nowadays. All of this made it fairly expensive and fairly hard to work with. I mean, the base frame and the base equipment on it is not that difficult to work with. It's when you really get to the electronics, you'll need to get out to one or two specialists to try to get this working. The Nightstar was immediately adopted by Kerensky's forces and put into service to fight the Emrys regime. It did really good, and some people started to think that this would replace the Marauder as the standard gunslinger mech in the future. Really, people loved it, but the problem was at the start of the First Succession War, people didn't want it to fall into enemies' hands, so all the production lines for it were targeted and destroyed without hesitation. GM's head engineer on Catil also died in a series of freak accidents, which I can really only chalk up to our good friends at Comstar deciding that, they shouldn't be around anymore, so they could have more influence in the long run. GM and Northstorm knew that a Nightstar existed. They still had the basic plans and some information on it. They just didn't have the tools and the personnel to start building it again. The recovery on the Elementary Core really was a great start for starting to rebuild those darn things, but it was really the introduction of various clans bondsmen into the whole mix and advanced intelligence gathering, basically capturing a couple from the clans, which led to the recrudescence of this particular model. Flanagan did have a part of this, as well as we did full overhaul and specification reviews on Jake Mason's Nightstar, which he inherited from his father in a very odd situation. You can probably check out the 3DO game that talks about him, or check out the different historical enough retelling of his exploits. The Nightstar quickly became incredibly popular with the Federated Commonwealth after its reintroduction in 3057, with commanders actually fighting to know who is gonna pilot them. GM was building a whole lot of them in the Federated Sun space, while Northstorm was the one building it in Lyran space, and they were present on both sides of the Civil War, generally in command roles, obviously. As we said earlier, Tancred Sandoval did land with a Nightstar on New Avalon during the Civil War and the final battles there, and he kind of led the forces from the front using it. The Nightstar is not a cheap machine, and it's probably going to run you about 20 million reserve currency for a 95-ton mech. It's still cheaper than many of the modern Omni-mechs out there, but still, it is not the cheapest thing around. The chassis and the armor are made of standard materials, so at least there's that. It's fairly easy to repair. That's probably why Jake Mason was able to keep his running for so long. And it's heavily protected with 18.5 tons of plates. The engine is a 285 pitman, giving it a reasonable 54 kilometers per hour, but it has to be an XL in order to save enough weight for it to be able to load all the equipment on it. It has 14 double heat sinks, 11 which are mounted in the engine, so you've got 3 that you need to make sure you're taking care of. And the design is decently cool based on the weapons that are mounted on it, and this decent amount of heat sinks. The NSR's 9J's targeting computer is really meant to engage at a range, and the weapons are meant for that as well. Each arm packs a massive Northstorm Model 7D Gauss rifle, the ancestor of the Poland that you generally see on a lot of mechs nowadays. The nose also mounts an ERPPC, giving you an ability to take out targets at extreme range with extreme prejudice. The fact that you get pretty much the same accuracy at extreme range than at short range if you know what you're doing with your targeting computer makes this really a nasty work. At closer range, each arm mounts a Defiance P5M medium pulse laser, and you've got an Exostar small laser underslung under the cockpit for good measure. It's decent enough when things get close by. Of course, the medium pulse lasers are not great weapons, but there's not much you can really do with them here. I've seen quite a few people replace them with medium or ER medium lasers and use the remaining tonnage to buff up different other things, generally ammo, but it doesn't even need extra ammo for the Gauss rifles because it's got plenty. So it's one of those odd situations. After a long lull, the Nightstar came back into production in 3057, and the Federated Commonwealth was requesting various specialties machine for their own need. The NSR-9 FCs is a rebrand of the Nightstar that goes a little bit faster with a 380 XL engine, giving it a top speed of 64 kilometers per hour. It was meant to match other Fedcom machines of the time and to be able to follow these formations. The main guns are replaced from Gauss Rifle to LB-10X autocannon, giving you some nice anti-air capabilities on top of things, while the tree lasers are now set up as standard medium lasers or ER medium lasers, depending on when you see those things floating around. The ER PPC is still there for longer range support. It's a different brand of Nightstar. It still works decently well. But I think in this one, I do prefer the Gauss rifles to the LB-10s, just because you need to be able to take advantage of that variable range targeting computer. Now, for a few odd ones, the Nightstar production was in full force when subsidiaries of GM, generally in various periphery parts, started asking for a piece of the pie. The idea was pretty good, and they were wanting to just cash in to this rediscovered model, but GM kind of played them by just giving them the specs to build the chassis and the engine and the basic core of the Nightstar, but none of the weaponry unless they were able to import it themselves. This led to various new models like the first NSR 9P, which the subsidiaries decided to make as a simpler model. Your 9P mounts a quartet of Ultra 5 class autocannons, which are much simpler to build than your Gauss rifles and much simpler to import if required. You have one in each arm and one in each side torso. You can get 5 tons of reloads to keep you in the fight for a decent amount of time. At closer range, you get the medium pulse lasers because those were decently easy enough to get, and a Streak 6 tube of SRM on the fancier models. You'll see a couple with regular 6 tubes instead. You shave off half a ton of the plates nonetheless on this to add an anti-missile system for extra protection. This is pretty decent for defense. It's going to help you out against the long-range bombardment of LRMs, which are one of the things that could be a threat to you. I have seen a few of those with light ferrofibrous as well that is tacked onto the design, which compensates for that afton being shaved off. It's okay as a design. It's not the best mech around, I would say. I would still prefer the twin Gauss rifle to 4 Ultra 5s, but you know, it's going to be surprising when someone sees one. The 10P model continues in the same line, with each arm now mounting an Ultra AC2 and an Ultra AC5. You get 3 tons of case-protected ammo for each class of gun, which means you're going to be able to stay in the fight for an extended period of time. The medium pulse lasers are moved to the side torso in order to let the big guns stay in the arms, and the ER PVC still sticks out of the middle to give you increased maximum long-range firepower. You have that little small laser that is removed as well, and it's replaced with a medium or an ER medium laser, depending on the day of the week and where you bought it. And you get a Guardian ECM to protect you from enemy electronics. Basically, you had to choose between an anti-missile system and a Guardian ECM. They decided to go with the Guardian, which is not a bad idea either, especially since this one is a little bit of a later design, more common during the Jihad era, which means a Guardian ECM will be useful to break up enemy C3 networks. Your body is protected by 17.5 tons of light ferrofibrous plates, which is perfectly reasonable. Next up in the production line was the Solaris models that were built by North Storm. A lot of those do reach the front lines and were used as a battering rams, but you know, they were mainly designed as Solaris brawlers. The 9S mounts a pair of Ultra 20 class autocannon, one in each arm, fed by 6 tons of reload, so you've got quite a bit there. For support, you get 3 medium pulse lasers and a nose-mounted small laser. You won't be able to take advantage of that variable range targeting as much, but you still will be able to. I mean, it's not a terrible setup. I would prefer regular medium lasers to the medium pulse there, just so they would match the range of the Ultra 20 class, and you'd be able to use that targeting computer a little bit better. You get 3 jump jets to give you a 90-meter jump range on top of it, which is pretty useful here, especially in a Solaris machine, but can be very nasty in a regular battlefield as well. You've got a Solaris special as well, the 9SS, which replaces one of the Ultra AC-20 with a Defiance Disintegrator LB-20X, splitting the ammo 3 tons Ultra, 3 tons LBX, allowing you to take advantage of punching big holes into enemies' armor to then be able to just pepper them with cluster shots. There was a clan refit of the Nightstar as well, and it was made popular by Shelley Brubaker of the Wolf's Dragoon. But if you start digging into the numbers and everything, you will see that it was a standard model that was used by the clans in the past. It basically uses the old internals of a Nightstar, nothing too fancy, standard inner sphere grade double heat sinks and engines and everything. But all the weapons are upgraded to Clan Standard, so you get a pair of Clan Gauss Rifle, which give you the same damage and range, they're just a lot lighter, which is backed by a trio of Large Pulse Laser, meaning that it's really deadly. The nose still mounts a small laser, but this time it's upgraded to an ER small laser, giving you just, a tiny little bit more range. This is probably one of the nastiest build out there. GM introduced a new Nightstar for the AFFS in 3144 with the NSR-10D, which combines some clan gear with their own technology. The arm now mounts a light Gauss rifle instead of the standard one, and a Clan ER large laser, giving you about the same amount of punch, just spread differently. The light Gauss rifle is also protected by Case 2, so if it gets damaged, it doesn't destroy the entire mech. Well, the Gauss rifle rarely do that much damage when they blow, but they do cause some. The nose mounts a Clan ER PPC, while the side mount mounts a medium X-Pulse laser. You get 16 double heat sinks in order to keep you cool. Those ER large lasers are going to be a lot more taxing. And you get 2 coolant pods on top of it all in order to flush out extra heat when required. To save on weight, an XL gyro is used on the XL engine assembly, which gives you a little bit more weight to play with. I say that this is the most recent Nightstar, but we've been getting leaks as usual from our good friends at Battle Lightning and probably the guy at GM that's really terrible at keeping secrets. We do know that GM builds clan-graded engines, and I've been hearing a lot of, well, we've been building Nightstars with Clan XL engines. Even the standard Nightstar with an Clan XL would be pretty decent because it would increase the survivability of the design by a fair margin. I do think it's a decent enough setup, and it's going to work well enough in the future. We do know as well that they're probably going to be replacing some of the parts on those 10Ds, probably giving us an 11D or something like that, using a standard gyro in order to increase survivability again. Potentially Clan Ultra 10 autocannons, since they are being built locally, or maybe rotary AC5s. I've heard that as well, instead of those light Gauss rifles. There's no clear definition as to what they are wanting to build. The only thing we really know is, well, we are making Nightstars with Clan XL engines going forward, at least on the GM side of things. If we look at North Storm, it is quite possible that they're buying the Clan Gauss rifles from Defiance, so maybe we're going to start seeing more of those Brubaker Nightstars as well with the 3 large pulse lasers. Who knows? It is moving pretty quickly here with some of the advanced technologies being integrated in those very popular machines. The Nightstar is honestly a really fantastic machine. Outside of working on the electronics, if you're an engineer on these things, everything on it is fairly easy to work on. You got a standard chassis most of the time. You got a standard armor. The engine is not that complicated. Gauss rifles are not that weird to work with nowadays. And once it gets on the battlefield, it does better than most mechs of its category. I understand that the Federated Sons wants to keep all of them in-house, and very few are actually being grabbed by anybody else. As a mercenary commander, you should always keep a buy order for one of those at your local hiring hall, and military officers should make sure to check with their quartermaster as soon as possible to see if one becomes available. Thank you for listening to me Thank you for listening to me for so long. I hope you guys have a very nice rest of your day, and I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.